Now, if I were to ask you how you're doing today, you'd probably tell me about your experience. Perhaps it's been a struggle. A delayed bus made your long commute even longer. Perhaps poor air quality forced a sick child to stay home. Perhaps a power cut upset your plans, or maybe there was no water supply today. Or you might tell me your day has gone smoothly, with time well spent, a pleasant morning commute and a productive workday, time enjoyed with your family or community. It's positive individual experiences like these that add up to a thriving, healthy city. Today, I want to talk to you about rethinking cities. In particular, what makes cities more equal, more successful, and how we measure that success. This is the right time for this conversation. Urban inequality had been increasing for years, and then came COVID 19. The pandemic has exposed and exacerbated inequalities and underlying weaknesses in our society. One such weakness is that we have not been measuring progress in the right way. To create more equal and prosperous cities that work for both people and the planet, we must stop using only narrow indicators like GDP and income to judge progress. And we must start thinking about people's everyday lived experiences. How people access core urban services like housing, water and sanitation, energy, and transport. What we learned today is that improving everyone's access to core urban services is a better way to create more opportunities and more equal cities. And when these services are inadequate, there is a heavy hidden toll that we've been ignoring for far too long. Before we go any further, here are some important facts. Today, 1 in 2 people live in cities. In low income countries, two-thirds of those living in cities live in slums or unserviced informal settlements. In these countries that are largely in the global south, about 80% of the urban employment is informal. People who work outside any social safety net, like construction workers, street vendors, waste pickers, domestic workers, and security guards. As cities grow, despite the opportunities they offer, the share of the urban poor is rising. Urban emissions are rising. Vulnerability to the impacts of climate change is rising too. By 2050, 2 in 3 people will live in cities, with the vast majority of this growth occurring in the global south. And these countries are expected to more than double their urban carbon emissions. You don't have to be an expert to understand that this is not sustainable for our planet or for people. 6 years of deep research involving over 160 authors and reviewers from dozens of countries have helped us develop a multi-dimensional roadmap for successful cities where no one is left behind. The synthesis of the World Resources Report Towards a More Equal City breaks down how cities can ensure well-being and opportunities for everyone. I'm proud to present it to you today. How people meet basic daily needs has huge implications for individuals and cities as a whole. Globally, at least 1 out of 3 urban residents lack access to one or more core urban services. There are estimates that unsafe sanitation imposes over $220 billion of costs per year globally in terms of poor health and lost wages. Whereas every dollar invested in water and sanitation leads to anywhere from $4 to $34 of benefits in time savings and health. Traffic congestion costs up to 10% of GDP in large cities like Beijing and Sao Paulo, whereas shorter commutes can save commuters a third or more of their spent income and can lower air pollution. Our research shows that irrespective of income, living with dependable access to core services saves time and expands opportunities. Conversely, living without access to core services creates tangible burdens. For example, Carolyn lives in Nairobi. Three times a week, she collects water from the standpipe near her house using 20-liter jerry cans. Sometimes the water service is cut off, so she has to buy water from an informal supplier. Sometimes Carolyn walks 2 kilometers to the closest borehole, waits 4 hours to fill as many jerry cans as she can, and then pays someone with a handcart to bring the water home. Sometimes the water is brown, with visible impurities, so she also purchases bottled water to drink. Carolyn is not alone. Based on primary data we collected in 15 major cities, we found that roughly half the citywide populations lacked access to piped water and needed to self provide just as she has to. It costs time to travel and wait in line for water from a truck or a kiosk. It costs money to purchase water from an informal supplier who may charge inflated rates. And it costs people their health, as the water quality is often dubious. These burdens, what's called the urban services divide, compound over time and across generations to systematically deny people opportunities for a better life. Once you look at it this way, you begin to see this impact everywhere. Luis works as a bus driver in Mexico City. He worries about the poor air quality. Urban sprawl is pushing commuters farther and farther from the city center to where public transport is inaccessible. As a consequence, people are increasingly reliant on unsustainable and expensive modes of transport. The pollution is getting worse, and Luis spends more time stuck in traffic. Our report finds that many people living in cities are like Luis. A study of residents living in peripheral areas of secondary cities in Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico found that their commutes cost twice as much and take 3 times as long as more centrally located households. With better land management and urban planning that ensures the provision of decent, affordable housing in locations with good access to services and jobs, this is fixable. But right now, Luis and millions like him are paying for a lack of core services with their time, money, and health. It all adds up to deny people tangible opportunities they could pursue with better access and time saved. And it adds up to deny the city the full potential of its residents' productivity and well being. It's quite simple. For the urban underserved, every burden carried is an opportunity lost. Every burden shed is an opportunity gained. Add up all the opportunities and lives are transformed. Add up all the lives and cities are transformed. At its core, this report is about individual and collective transformation. But to make that happen, we must reimagine cities. We must rethink what is important. Our research allowed us to dig deeper into what it takes to make cities more equitable and sustainable. We identified 7 powerful cross-sectoral transformations and how they can be achieved. We can think about these transformations in 3 buckets. Number 1, reimagine service provision. Cities need to be more flexible and more ambitious in improving access for the underserved, with greater emphasis on low carbon and climate resilient infrastructure and services. For example, in Durban, Rosario, and Bangkok, informal settlements in flood prone areas have been upgraded in partnership with community groups. Cities can also expand access to services by integrating informal and alternative service providers and providing financial assistance to upgrade services, as Pune has done for waste collection and Cape Town has done for transport services. Number 2, include the excluded. Cities need to improve data collection to more fully serve the needs of vulnerable residents and to understand the value of the informal economy. Integrating community knowledge and inviting communities to participate in data collection can expose gaps and allow residents to advocate for change. For instance, under an initiative of Slum Dwellers International operating in hundreds of cities, community groups in Nairobi mapped over 50,000 households in informal settlements, and could then lobby the city's water and sewer company for more convenient water sources. Number three, enable lasting change. We find three common structural barriers that prevent more equitable access to services in cities: shortfalls in financing, mismanagement of urban land, and misaligned governance processes. Breaking these barriers requires investing more and differently. It requires integrated planning with more transparent land markets, and it means building coalitions and aligning policies around a shared vision. The overall impact is well worth the effort. For example, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, and Johannesburg subsidize affordable housing in places that are well connected to jobs and services. This involves aligning spatial development policies across government levels, engaging with local communities, and steering private developers to invest in these areas so that residents of such developments are set up for long term success. As you can tell, this requires deliberate planning and coordination. The transformations require multiple actors to work together: city and national governments, the private sector, development finance institutions, and civil society, which includes experts, NGOs, and communities. There is no one size fits all, but if you take away one fact from this report, remember this: across the board, the cumulative benefit of improving access to core services for the underserved far outweighs the investment, particularly in cities of the global south. I've described how access to core urban services can create opportunities and transform the lives of individuals and households in cities. I'll tell you what that's meant for me personally. Back when I was a college student in Delhi, public transport was unreliable, with frequent incidents of harassment. So I used a two wheeler to commute, which was quite risky on Delhi's dangerous roads and rare for women in that city. But this allowed me to access internships, run errands for my household, and have an active social life. So many opportunities. Frankly, reliable, affordable access to transport was life changing. It gave me greater independence. It undoubtedly enriched my personal and professional growth. When scaled up across millions of people, access to core services like transport can transform the economies and environments of entire cities. Thankfully, Delhi now has a world class, non polluting metro system connecting the area close to my home and my former college. Add up the opportunities created by just one high quality public transit system. Add up the lives forever changed. That's how we should measure success. And that's how we can transform cities. This World Resources Report, and more importantly, the community that contributed to it, provides a multidimensional vision and a roadmap to transform lives and the urban experience across the world. It could not be better timed. COVID-19 is making us all reassess our lives and what is important. We're living in a different world now. Cities are different. The global economy is different. The climate is different. So please join our shared vision for more equal and sustainable cities. Join us as we help drive urban transformation across the world. This report isn't the end, it's the beginning. Together, it's time to rethink cities.